questions. You have them. I got answers. Lars, this is why you're wrong. Be prepared to be educated.
If only Lars was here. Did you see Francois had to step out?
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, cool.
It's all good. Thank you. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask
Yeah,
away.
I actually thought of one like a second before you came in. Kind of other than just, learning and just being better as far as skill is concerned, jumping into the industry as a concept artist is a little, I don't want to say scary, but a little daunting. What was one of the more difficult aspects of being like a new budding concept artist, in general?
I think the biggest problems that I ran into when I was a concept artist was this idea of it really wasn't anything. I just the idea really that hurt me the most or affected me the most was this idea that I was going to be happier, and it just never came. And what I mean by this is that like I just never felt satisfied, and that was a big one that affected me pretty heavily. And one thing that I think that came to light for me was that I was the happiest when I was working to try to work in the industry, because I was
Really?
always studying, I was always practicing and training, and that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like encouraged by this constant growth, and I just wasn't getting it from the industry as much as I thought I was. I don't know what else I was going to expect,
Right.
but what I learned was that, life is hard. Doesn't matter. Like having a job doesn't solve any of these problems.
Mm-hmm.
There's I forget who said this, but there's like a great quote from like a rapper. I think it was a rapper, maybe not. But basically this quote that I kind of agree with, money doesn't solve your problems. It just amplifies what you already, like who you already are.
Yeah, I think that is a rapper, actually.
Yeah, like if
I think that is a
if you're
rapper.
really bad with money and you're really bad with people, and money doesn't solve that. It makes it worse. Like Biggie Smalls said, more money, more problems, right? And then as I made more money, I had more problems. It was crazy. I was like, what the? Biggie was right, you know? There's a great song by Ludacris too. It's called Problems. And it's the same, it's based off the same idea, same principle. You know? And I'm just like, this is a consistent thing. And so that was like the biggest thing. Because like drawing and painting for clients and stuff like that, I understood like what I need to do. I just do it, right? Like the way that you work is that someone gives you feedback and then you just do the work. They say, hey, draw a pink dinosaur. You draw a pink dinosaur, you know? And
And
if it,
suddenly money.
yeah, and if they don't like it, then you adjust it. You make better versions. Because most
Right.
likely, if you get hired, you're hired because of your skills, you know? And because you have some sort of connection with the studio and the people that work there. That's not always true, but you get my point. Like it shouldn't be an accident you working at the studio, okay? And so,
Right.
and if it is, then yeah, maybe. Like, let me give you a good example of that. There was this guy who was a 3D artist who worked for the studio, and when he worked for the studio, he I'll sit down and explain this one. When he was working for the studio, he had a hard time doing the work, and they would come to his desk and he would say that like he wasn't ready, and then like a day later they'd come to his desk and he'd say that it crashed, like the Maya file or whatever. And then so 2 days later they'll check again. It was like Friday now, and again he said there was a crash. He's not sure what's going on, and so they said we'll get some IT people to take a look at it, but they need to have something by Monday already. And then Monday rolls by, again doesn't have anything, and he says that like it must have been the file corrupted or something because he couldn't bring it to work. Now the reality was either he had extremely bad luck, or he just wasn't qualified. Like maybe he stole artwork from others, because that's the thing. People do that. Not a lot, but people do that. But I never understood that, because once you start to work, they'll catch you out. You know, like
Right.
you're gonna immediately be found as a fraud. You know?
Yeah, it's like when you have a second language on your job application, and they're like, "Prove it." You're
Yeah,
like,
like
"Oh,
these things are easily proven. Yeah, exactly. And so that, like I said, if you get hired because you cheated, then yes, be worried because you're not qualified. But other than that, I don't assume that's going to be a problem that you're going to run into. You know, I just don't see that happening.
right,
Um,
right,
so if you get hired because they saw your portfolio and they liked it. You know, and you're not getting hired for the same reasons. You know, they didn't hire you because they don't like your portfolio. It's that simple. And when you work there, you know, circumstances are different for every studio, but if you're able to kind of keep up with my class and have finished paintings by the end of my class, that's a good standard to live by. Okay, you shouldn't be worried. That's what I'm trying to get at. Does it make sense? Does that help you understand?
yeah, yeah, it does for sure.
Yeah, there's no advice I can give either way that could be countered by another circumstance. Meaning that there are studios where they would be like that they're what's the word? Yeah, there's some studios that will have a little bit more you know, they'll be a little bit more relaxed, where other studios are a little bit more hardcore. You know what I mean? There's studio by studio is different. And I think once you understand uh if you understand that principle, then you won't be surprised that if you work one time you worked for a studio super relaxing and the other time studio super rigid, you'll be prepared. Like, well, yeah, different people, different walks of life. It's obvious, you know. And it's best to just focus on the things you can control. Like I always say, the quality of your work and the people you know. You know. Otherwise,
Yeah,
everything else is just kind of a distraction.
right. Yeah, I've understood that. Like, after a certain point, there's just too many unknowable
Uh
situations,
huh.
as far as like the industry is concerned, and the only thing you can do is be the constant in the equation.
Yep.
Um, and that's
Absolutely.
pretty much all you can do.
Yeah. So I get your questions, right? Because it seems so mysterious and so um like is there this and that? Like, you know, you want to get in the darks crevices of what the industry's like. And it's really like your intuition's right about that. Like there's so many, like for instance, let me give you an example. So Blizzard has multiple teams. So in Blizzard, wow, they didn't have concept artists, right? They would have 3D artists who would draw and concept and model everything. They've just began a concept art department, but then the um, the cinematics team has like a whole team of concept artists. We had like 15 of us, you know, and we were acted as a visual effects studio. You know, we ran completely different than the WoW team, and then the
Right.
Diablo team had like a mixture of game dev and concept. You know, and it was a large team as well. And then the Hearthstone team is much smaller than all the other teams, but they are making the most money. Like, you know, and so it's kind of like even internally in Blizzard, it's like all over the place. You know, people hated working on Titan, which was now Overwatch. But now people love working on Overwatch. Everyone wants to work on Overwatch now internally at Blizzard. Right? Do you see kind of like, oh, that's pretty interesting, right? It's not like Blizzard has like a standard of living for every studio. It's like each and every project has a different way of running the show.
Right. Yeah, and that was kind of my guess as well, just because there's gonna be a slight tangent, but working at this Best Buy, like, you know, when I would go into a new position, I'm like, oh, this is just gonna be standard. But then every single situation is different, and it's like there is no standard. Everything's different. Everything changes
Different
consistently.
people.
Like,
Different people.
everything every single time.
Yeah, that's true for the industry as well. Excuse me. I mean, that, and then if with that intelligence, it takes you much further. That's all I'm trying to get at. Okay.
Cool.
And you'll be prepared more so than anyone else. Like for instance, at Sony Santa Monica, they have producers and managers and all this great stuff. But at Naughty Dog, they have no such thing, and they're just across the street from one another. You know, and so that says something about like what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, just pay attention to the things that you can actually, like you said to yourself, which I thought was great. The constant that you're in control of. Everything else you're not in control of. So don't even try, unless you own the company. But then it's a whole different story.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the industry is great though. Don't get me wrong. It just
I know it's great. It's just like, it seems like from the outside looking in, more or less, it seems unusual as far as like how everything goes, but it sounds like it's more part of the course from what I've gotten used to.
Yeah, there is this article that was posted by someone in the industry talking about gamer culture, because I guess a lot of gamers are starting to complain that like, why aren't more studios more transparent with the development?
Oh, the toxic community, toxic community thing. Yeah. I think that was like a Taco article.
Yeah, and he was saying the reason why developers don't let people know what's going on is because every time they do, you have this huge group of toxic players that complain all of a sudden, you know? So you tell them, hey, this thing takes a while to do. And they're like, what? You promised me all this stuff. And they flip out. And so then the developers, like, it's like a no-win situation. Like if they keep it secret, then they feel like the consumers or the fans feel like they're hiding the problems of development from them, right? And they're just looking to hash out. And then if they say, well, no, we're not, we're actually developing, we're working on it, and then they're, oh, see, but look, you said you were going to put this into the game. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, right? Which I agree with, right? I actually agree with that sentiment. You know, people need to calm the fuck down, and on both sides of the equation, you know, and just people just don't know any better. They just like these trolls. They just literally do not know how the industry rolls. And once you understand how the industry rolls, then your perspective changes, and you become more sympathetic. Like as soon as I started working on movies and films and video games, I started to understand why films and movies and video games fail. Right? It's not like the studio thinking, and this is not always true. There's always the occasional studio that doesn't give a fuck, right? But generally, this is just not the consensus. Like, it's not like these studios are in a meeting and they're like, okay, how can we fuck the consumer and get away with it, right? They want to make the most money they could possibly can and also create the best experience they possibly can, you know? And sometimes they just had a vision and then they failed. Like the best way that I like to explain this is that, you know, everybody thinks they know what the hell they're talking about when they critique a movie or a video game, but not until you've actually done it. I think you have to, like, I wouldn't trust a doctor who actually never went to medical school, never never worked on a patient or never even helped anybody, you know, but they just read a lot of WebMD, you know, like I wouldn't trust that person with medical advice, you know. I would trust the people that their livelihood is built around this, right? Like this is one of the main reasons why I've switched over to the plant-based diet, right? Not because of like I have some sort of weird ideological belief with animals and all this stuff, like spiritual stuff that a lot of vegans attach themselves to, which I think is fine. And actually, nothing wrong with that. I don't. That's not where I. That's not the angle I came in. I just saw the data of these scientists who reversed heart disease, reversed diabetes, right? And I'm like, wait, what? You know? And just countless evidence from these doctors. I trust their opinion. I don't trust the some sort of nature guru who like rubs oils on their face and says that it like helps you remove cancer or some crazy shit. Like that's stupid, you know? And and I think like that's how I feel about film critics, you know? It's not that I don't trust their opinion, and I don't that they don't they shouldn't be allowed an opinion. But in what world or when did we decide that movie critics or game critics are these like voices of of power? You know, that they actually have a lot of knowledge. You know, I don't think that's fair, and that's why I generally don't listen or follow publications that actually whenever they say, oh, this game is awful, and then I've played the game myself and I'm like, I love this game, what the hell are they talking about, you know? I stopped listening to those people uh, objectively, you know, because I realize they're just biased for whatever reason. They just don't like this type of stuff, you know.
Right.
And that's how I treat it. Super subjective. It's all subjective opinion. And so I listen to the reviewers that pretty much align with what I like, you know? Like
Right.
like there was like the people who were like bashing the guy that was really bad at the game Cuphead, you know?
Oh, there
Yeah,
was.
yeah, there's this guy who like could not even get past the tutorial. And people like lost their shit and they're like, you shouldn't even be able to review a game if you can't even play it, right? That was a criticism that most people had on the internet. And
Right.
I'm just thinking, he just probably doesn't play these games. And it wasn't that he was even reviewing it; he was just playing it. He just
Right.
happened to be a reviewer. He was caught playing the game, and he was really awful. And then people got wind of this, and they started criticizing his ability to criticize.
Right.
And I'm like, again, to the point I was making, like, I don't care if people have opinions. It's just like, why does everyone think they're an expert at everything? Now there's experts about people being experts.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like either you like that person's opinion or not, and then move on with your life, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I started like thinking objectively about movies that I disliked and started thinking why they did so well. And then started looking at movies that I loved and I started understanding why they do so poorly. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about this before because that is reality. Like you may not like Transformers, but they're making 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. You know, they're going to keep making them
Right.
until until people
Until
stop
the
wanting will not watch them anymore.
Right. Yeah, I was actually gonna say something about Transformers because well, maybe not Transformers, but that genre, like action movies. I
Yeah.
went to see the latest Fast and Furious, and I would sit there and watch it and be like, "This is probably the dumbest shit I've ever seen. This makes no goddamn sense." But when I turned off my brain, it was so much fun just be there. I was like, I get it. Like, I get why
Yeah.
these movies are like really popular. They're just
Yeah.
fun. Like, don't take it so serious. Just enjoy the fucking movie.
Yeah,
And I
the
feel like
movie
people forget
knows
that.
that the movie knows that it's not serious, and it doesn't care about your opinion that like this highbrow prestigious opinion that you have
Right,
because
right.
it's still making billions of dollars.
Exactly. It's gonna make
like
billions, like regardless of what
like
you want.
so like if you look at this is so I use places like I use objective evidence, right? So you know I don't look at Rotten Tomatoes anymore. Okay. So Kingsman 2, by the way, I love that movie. If you like just action genre movies, then Kingsman is for you. See, this is great. So it did well. Like worldwide, it got its money back. So this makes it profitable. What was the
Hmm.
first Kingsman like? Here, let me see. Yeah, so the lifetime gross worldwide was 400 million. So they make most of their money overseas. So they do Kingman versus Kingman. So the domestic gross release date. Okay. So this is like, this is useful. So look, total gross was 128. This is 47. So this is still making money. But like here, opening weekend, this was in, it actually was in less theaters. So that might be a variable to consider. Yeah, see, the average is lower. This is usually pretty expected. Opening percent of total, though. Let's see. And so you can see right here, domestic percent of worldwide, 41%. Yeah. So I think I think it's another success. I think it did well again, and I loved it. It was so funny. My wife loved it too. We watched it together, and we were laughing. And really good action scenes. They have some of the best action scenes I've seen in a while. They had a little bit of larger budget, so they were modest. So they understood not to spend more money, even though they made a lot of money. And so they've if you do not make your money back on opening weekend, like or the first 2 weeks of it being out, then it's considered a flop. You're never going to make that money back, or it's going to take forever to make that money back. So here's so people are like getting hyped. Like a lot of people on our circles are getting hyped about Blade Runner.
Yep.
Right? And I'm predicting that Blade Runner is not going to do so well. And I'm predicting it based off of evidence. Okay. So I'm not sure what the budget was for Blade Runner. So maybe it did make its money back. It could have been a cheaper film. I have no idea. But it only made $32 million worldwide. Now you might think, well, inflation, right? That might have been more money back in the 80s, right? That's not that long ago. So it's not that much of inflation, okay?
Yeah.
But to give you a context, another movie that was made in the 80s was also E.T. I believe in the same year, 82.
Holy shit.
So even without inflation, this made almost $1 billion.
Right.
This
That's
was
so
a
much
success.
more money.
Yeah, this was a tremendous success, and for good reason. It was a great movie. Even today, it's still amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and so you have to consider that, right? Right. Like let's go to Rotten Tomatoes. There's some things you should see too with Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, so what are they? How do they rate the movie? They like Kingsman. It's 50%. All right. Did they like the first Kingsman though? Let's see. Because I love the first Kingsman. So they gave this one a 74%. So for whatever reason, they don't like the newer one. All right, it's fine with me. But let's look at. Let's see. They started rating older films. So see, they gave this one like a 90%. I think E.T. would be pretty high. And you'd think, okay, well, with a high rating, that must mean that it's a great film. It must mean it must have done well. See, obviously, it better
Jesus, on 98.
So obviously, people generally love this more, right? Based off of. Oh wait, let me see my son. Handsome boy. Yeah. I love you, son. You look handsome. Okay. But so you would think, okay, so this is a pretty good track record, right? Like these movies, people love Blade Runner and people love E.T. Well, at least the theaters say people loved E.T. They did not like Blade Runner, or they didn't care for it, you know? But think of a movie that you like. Name any movie that you think, like an older movie that you really loved. Think of one right now. I'll look it up.
Oh, a movie that I love right now? Ooh, I got one. The One, Jet Li.
Oh,
that's a classic.
I love the one too. So this is going to be a good one to rate against the. Yeah, I will be the one, and he's like on the top.
Yeah.
I remember
my life into pieces.
Yeah,
yeah. It's like, oh god.
And then he's like fighting
and
all
CGI zoom out, like, oh good.
Yeah, he's
I
fighting.
watched that recently. It was. I still loved it though. Like
No, I
I
liked
saw
it
all
too.
the I was like, I love it.
I
So
think I
good.
still have the film.
Oh
The,
yeah.
what is this here? Sorry, guys. Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, Jet Li, the one is not here. Okay,
That's
what other movie? Think of any other movie.
trying to think. What's a go-to movie?
Go-to movie? Memento.
Yeah, Memento is solid.
Matrix, Blade, the first Blade.
Yeah.
Oh,
What happened on my
yeah.
day? This shit was good.
Yeah, Memento is super solid.
Memento. Okay, so Memento. Wait, did I spell that right?
It's MEMENTO.
Memento. That's right. It was like, but it put something up, so I just went with it.
Right.
Yeah, with
Yeah,
double E.
Guy Pearce.
Yeah, I know which one. That movie was great. So see, rated beautifully, but did it do well? That's the real test.
Haircut.
It didn't. Well, actually, no, I take it back. If the budget was only $9 million, then it was a success. It just doesn't. It's not like a major blockbuster like you would expect, right? And I don't remember it being one. I remember it being a niche film. You know. And so this all lines up, right? Like all this lines up with the people liking it. So there are what the Medea Halloween. Yeah, you see movies like Medea Halloween keep getting made.
I don't know how, but
I do know how.
It's happening.
Well, like try to guess. Let's put this into practice. This idea of being a little bit wiser. Why do you think it is doing well?
Honestly, I would probably say it gets funding. And there's a section of people who actually do want it made. So they're the ones who are, showing up to theater. They're the ones who are voicing their opinions. And clearly, I guess if there's a market for it, people are willing to buy it. And Tyler Perry isn't exactly broke or anything, so he can make it happen.
Yeah. Who do you think is watching it, though? If you had to guess.
Oh, probably the Black community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like it's 100% getting paid. And it's funny because my mom really likes that series. I'm like, well, why? Like
because it's made for your
that's
mom.
Fine. Yeah, I mean, like
that's
why.
why.
I'm like, hey, that's fine. They found their target audience and they are drilling that. Like
it's the
that's
same
fine.
with like the Adam Sandler thing, right? Like people are like, "What's Adam Sandler doing?" He's like, "He's making money." Like he knows exactly what he's doing, and that's the conundrum that I think people have is that they have their opinion and their taste buds of what they like, and when they see something that's like completely opposed to what they like, they flip out. And I think people need to, like, you're allowed to say something like, I don't like Medea, right? That's actually totally fine. The point I'm trying to make is then if you say, I don't like Medea, but I try to understand why it does well, and I will respect why it does well. I mean, you don't even have to necessarily respect it too, but like respecting the game that's being played, the hustle, it's important, because if you then want to make a decent living or be successful in what you do, then having this knowledge will allow you to create content that is going to reach larger groups, or very niche groups in this occasion. For instance, for me, I know exactly what my market is, so that's why I am successful at selling to that market, right? Like people who want to be concept artists,
Right.
Not everybody wants to be concept artists, so it doesn't make sense to me to invest a lot of time and money teaching or advertising to people who could care less, right?
Yeah, I ran into that when I was in college. Not very fun.
So what you want to do is you want to focus in on where they're at. You want to meet people where they're at, right? And so for me, like Facebook was a great tool to this, because it allowed me to find these groups of people much easier. And I would just post my artwork and people follow me. And I post my artwork and then people will follow me. And I'll post my artwork and then people will follow me. you know? And I was able to find my audience, like the people who genuinely care about the stuff that I do. And that was really something that I learned. Because at one time I did a thing on Facebook, you can pay for ads, right? Or like clicks and likes and whatever. But I realized there's like this subset of people that are not real people, and they'll click and give you likes, but they don't actually exist. And I realized that I had very small engagement from this small audience, or this large audience that I thought I had, you know. So then I learned to be a little bit more proactive of just finding the audience members that actually care about what I do, you know. And the best way to do that is to be honest and just to keep promoting your work, you know, slowly but surely. Everyone's in such a hurry to have such high numbers of followers. But if you just, you know, post artwork and people find you naturally, that's way more effective, you know?
Yeah, sorry, I'm on the highway. But yeah, I actually I have another question.
Well, before you
Regarding.
do,
Oh, sorry.
let's
Go
see
ahead.
if Julio has a question. Do you have any questions, Julio?
No, I'm gathering some refs for my goal of rendering, and I'm fucking working on it. But I'm listening. Don't worry. I'm just like in work mode.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
also
fine.
a little sick, so
No excuses. Don't be sick.
trying to not use my throat too much. But I'm
Punch your
listening. I'm here.
sickness. Punch your sickness in the throat.
That's what I always do.
All right, go ahead. Ask your question. I just had to make sure that Julio's.
Yeah, I low-key forgot Julio was in there. I saw him typing, and then I realized he wasn't talking, so I was like, he must be busy.
Yeah, I don't care about Julio.
Yeah, screw Julio. My questions. But yeah, as because I more or less teach as well, like concept art to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
and game development. I was curious, what would be something that you feel as though, as a teacher, that you learned really helps with getting across to a student, you know, like what you're trying to teach them. Not necessarily like just draw the straight line, you know what I mean? Nothing like that, but like keep practicing, do your study, stuff like that. What do you, other than, like, because what I find really helpful is repetition, as far as like
Yeah.
constantly saying it, because then they slowly just start picking it up even if they don't want to. Even if it's from a negative perspective, they're like, okay, he told me that a bunch of times, that's like fucking annoying. But you know, at the end of the day, they got the idea in their head and it's stuck, and that's the whole point. So I was just curious if there was anything else that you found that was really useful.
Yeah, I think empathetic, being empathetic to people's situations. Like I like to give people a chance, and so they'll say to me, "Hey, you know, this and this or that and that, and like life this, life that." And then I say, "Okay, cool," you know, and we'll just go from there. But then if I see a pattern of like, you know, that they aren't actively engaging in the things that I suggested that they should do, you know, then I'll start to comment on that, right? But only once I've had some sense of evidence. And the way that I explain this is that, you know, if you think of it like you're only as strong as your weakest link kind of attitude, it's a really good way of going about it. And so this the same way is like you're only as good as your weakest student type of attitude. Does that make sense? And so if you can get the student who is the most unenthused and most uh, lazy, the one that doesn't want to do anything, like, you know what I mean? Like if you can get that person to work, right? That says a lot about you as a teacher. And a good example of like the opposite would be like, you know, you would have that student in your class. It's like really active, does a lot of good work. Every class is there, attentive, paying attention, doing really good job. You encourage them in a different way, right? You give them the challenges that are going to challenge them. But then if there's another artist who is like just not nearly as good, to treat them at the same level is naive, because I understand the sentiment of like, you know, making sure that people understand that life's hard and things are challenging. I get that. because it is true. But then to assume the worst, like this person just doesn't have what it takes, is also, I think, a little short-sighted from a teacher's point of view, because being bad is temporary. You know what I mean? It's just temporary. And if you can, like I said, train somebody who has some decent skill and all they need is just more discipline, and you can just train that in them and teach it in a way where they can actually swallow it and continue doing it, that is the best strategy you can employ. So being empathetic is one of the best ways. Like, so they say, hey, you know, sick this weekend, I couldn't do it. And you say, oh, well, okay, no problem, right? Or I was too busy, I couldn't do it, you know? You see what I'm saying? Like all of these different potential and realistic problems that they keep saying that these are occurring, then you trust them. But if they keep saying it after 2 weeks, then you would have more evidence against them. And that's the way I usually pose it to students. I don't say that you're lazy. I say I have now more data to call you lazy. You know, like,
Yeah, it's not
and
just a blanketed statement.
yeah, and it's harder for them to then discount that argument, right? It's like, because I did listen to all the things you suggested and all the problems that you mentioned to me, but yet you're still having these problems. And everything else that you say to me, every time you say, well, I need to do more of this, what you're saying, I hear you, but I don't think that's the problem. I think this is the problem. I then will say, well, then why do you keep having this problem if you think you know how to solve these solutions? You've taken my class, so you want to know solutions. I'm here to giving them to you. You know, I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been teaching quite a bit of people. I know what you think might be right, but trust me on this, you know? Because I don't think any of you guys have been truly afraid of turning in your work. You know, some people are like that, but I don't think anyone here has that fear, right? You guys are just,
No.
you might feel bad, you might feel like, I could have been better or whatever, but
Yeah.
you know that you're going to get some feedback and an opportunity to ask questions to help you out, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's what it should be. That's what the environment should be like. You know?
Yeah, I've had people not want to turn in their work for X, Y, Z, and then or they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't do the homework for this reason." I'm like, "Okay, you know you're gonna do the homework right now, right? Like I'm not teaching you further." And I've always had a bad, not necessarily mentality, but when I see students not working or I'm not quite understanding why, I have like it puts a bad taste in my mouth towards that student,
Yeah.
and that's why I was asked because
And
I
I'm
haven't had that.
saying,
Cause go ahead.
yeah, and I'm saying that that's not a good strategy.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I completely agree. Like I
Okay.
was very aware at the time that wasn't good strategy, but it was like I couldn't help but get a little
I get it,
frustrated.
man. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. Because you know, like, you put a lot of good effort and you're trying and you're just trying to help them out. It's the tough love strategy, right? And all I'm trying to get at is, like, the tough love strategy works for people who can effectively use tough love, right?
Hmm. Right.
Um, but here's a way of thinking about this that you might respect. Um, Imagine that you had a chicken feed that you were giving to your chickens, right?
Hmm.
And 70% of, or 30% of your chickens were doing fine. They're eating the chicken feed, and it was a little bit, it was a little bit tough at first, but they're now stronger because of it. They're growing bigger, right, and healthier.
Hmm.
30% of them, but the other 70% are like dying and vomiting and like getting really sick. You know.
Right.
So what do? Do you keep giving them chicken feed? That same chicken
Probably
feed?
not.
No,
Probably
right?
not. Like
You'll try
that's
to
not
find an
working.
alternative, right? Because too many chickens are being affected negatively by it, right?
Hmm.
And so even in a situation where you would say, let's flip the script, like 70% of the chickens are effectively doing okay, but then 30% are doing really bad. Like, are you going to still stick with that? No, you're actually still want to find, you
Yeah,
want to try
try
to
and
get
get
to
a
the
higher
100.
percentage.
Yeah, you want to try to
Right.
get to the 100. You'll never get there, but
Yeah.
you're trying is best, you know?
Hmm.
And if you think of it like that, like the way that you know, help instruct your students, if you think that um like, if you do a tactic where only 30% of the students respond positively to it, it's a good opportunity to then ask yourself that you are the problem potentially, right? Like I said, there's more to say about you as a teacher if you can get those people who are not hardworking to all of a sudden be hardworking,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Like that, and that's challenging. We always talk about it's
really is.
students' fault, but
Mm-hmm.
why don't we also talk about that it's the teacher's fault as well?
Yeah.
There's room for both people to be bad at it.
Right.
And I learned the hard way, right? Like I had a student where I was overly critical with her, and then she dropped the class. And it wasn't that I was wrong. Like I was basically explaining to her that she really needed to practice her anatomy. And she said, I only want to practice my anatomy when I have like real models. And I said, that's just not practical, right?
Right.
It's just very unlikely to keep practicing at a very consistent rate with that standard, you know? And I was like, plus there's nothing wrong with photos and stuff. And she's like, no, it's like cheating. And she had all these excuses. And I was trying to explain to her, and I was pretty aggressive about it. And I was saying stuff along the lines of like, what do you think's going to happen out there? Like people aren't going to care and all stuff, which I still say because it's still true, but I have a better way of saying it these days, you know? And she just didn't take kindly to those comments, and she just dropped out. And I thought to myself, she wasn't a bad artist though, you know? Like she actually was pretty good. She just wasn't committing, and she just had bad anatomy, you know? And I was like, and when I started, I was much worse than her. So I know that she can be a better artist if she just listened to my advice, you know?
Right.
It happened to me twice. One student dropped out, another student cried in my class because I was being really critical of their values. And I was like, your values are really garbage. Your materials are garbage. Because I had a teacher that was like that with me, and it worked really well. He was like, you suck. Like, you're very gimmicky. You'll never make it in the industry kind of attitude. And I was like, I'll show you, you know? Because for me, that's kind of how I am, you know?
Right.
But to see that's selfish to assume that everyone else should be act like that. Like, no, everyone, there's all walks of life. And the more I met other artists, like really amazing artists who had different personalities, it made me very clear that not everybody is like tough as nails, you know? Like there's a lot of people who are really passive. There's a lot of people who are super optimistic, people who are super pessimistic. You know, there's like artists of all types. So then it makes me think like, you know, just because a student's a little timid or can't take harsh criticism doesn't mean that there isn't an artist out there that can't take harsh criticism. Like there's plenty of them that actually exist that are professional, but they found a different way of managing through it, even though they couldn't handle it, because their love for art was overwhelmingly more than their lack of like, you know, ability to take some feedback from a person that was being really harsh with them, you know?
Yeah.
And then that's what, like I said, like that made me start realizing that maybe I should think differently about how I can help people. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I actually have, that's actually really good. Just because I know that I've had, like I said, I've had students that didn't do work, blah, blah, blah. And I definitely did. Not necessarily the tough love, but I did I want you to confront you situation where I just sit there, similar to like what you do to us. I'll just look at them and be like, why didn't you do your work? And just wait for them to answer. And I let them think. I was like, take your time. We have 30 minutes. Why didn't you do your work? Like, we have all the time in the world right now. Like, and I try and make them come to their own conclusions. But, you know, some people, they would get nervous and they would like, not say break down or anything, but they would just like shut down and they would just like not talk. They would like cave into themselves and they really wouldn't like that one-on-one. And I'd be like, look, just do your work. That's all I'm asking. Like, I'm not saying do it great because you aren't great. No, I didn't say that part, but it's like, you're not great,
Well,
but
see,
it's
so
like,
that's
just do the work.
yeah,
Like,
so
that's all I'm asking you to do.
And that's the thing, right? You're not wrong, but it could be your demeanor, right? Like you're coming at them like, why didn't you do your work, dude? Like, you know, like you might already coming with a sense of pressure that they're just not prepared to face. Where I, like you said, I do the same thing, but I ask you, and I think when you hear me speak, you can tell that I'm not trying to grill you. I'm just genuinely trying to have you. I'm just trying to have more information so we can solve the problem.
Right.
You know, like I'm not saying it's not me trying to rat you out of a problem, which I do use that tactic. I'll give you an example of the one that I use, and you guys know this one. where I'll be like, like, oh, okay, what happened? And you're like, oh, this and this and that and that and this. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can work on it. Like, maybe we can fix this part, or we can work on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then usually that works. We did with Dan, who's not here right now, but Dan was a great example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Explained to him very clearly that it's fine, like just do this and do that, and you'll be okay. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
something's going on with him right now. I'm not even worried about it. I really am not. I think he said he wasn't going to be here either, right? I think that's what he was saying. I forgot. But my point is that I generally, if I want people to learn how to improve themselves, right? Because that will
Right.
overall help them improve their work. And a good example of the kind of thing where I do grill you guys is the whole study thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to make it clear to you guys, every single time you have these issues, it is almost always this,
Yeah. It's almost like self-inflicted.
Yeah, and I know, and I always tell you guys in a million different ways that this is like your biology. Actually, I have a good excuse for why this happens. It's because of your physiological behavior, right? It's just built into our bones, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you have to actively fight, you know.
Right.
And it's in all of us. No one's immune to this. Like I said, if anything, if we were to really get into genetics here, maybe that is my genetic advantage, is that I was never able to I'm okay with sucking. And I'm in a real way. People will say that they are, like
Mm-hmm.
many of you guys have, but then you will still act upon these weaknesses,
Right.
even though you acknowledge it consciously. Me, I do not act upon it I do not act upon my weaknesses. I don't have them. I just know that I suck, and I know it's a product of lack of skill and lack of knowledge. I've known that intuitively my whole life, and I've only just been able to word it for the last 5 or 6 years as I teach people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But intuitively, I've always known. Just got to put in the time, right?
Right.
But now I've just been able to kind of constantly, like, as I teach different types of personalities, I've kind of come to this conclusion, and it works. Then my students start painting and drawing more, and then they're like, yeah, you were right. Who would have thought that if I just draw a lot more, study in between, that I
Right.
improve in a very consistent way,
Yeah.
That's the key word there, consistent. Not like amazing, just consistent, because consistency we can work with,
Right.
Wait, hold on just a second. Yeah, I can go get them. You were gonna wait there, or you want me to go? I'm about to go right now. Yeah, I'm finishing my class. Yeah. Okay. And so, like I stay consistent to these issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I said, I mentioned this before. Like this advantage that I may have, right? Like if I were to say that I actually have one, is
Mm-hmm.
an advantage that anybody can learn or obtain. That's what I love about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I think we talked about this before, right? Like I can't get any taller, right? So I can't beat that advantage over Kobe. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can cheat it, or I can get like those stilts and stuff, but that'd be clearly cheating. And if I can use stilts, why couldn't he?
Right. Right.
And so that you get my point. I can't literally, at least right now, I can't grow, even if I want.
At least right now.
Yeah, but to teach people to kind of have a mentality that allows them to stay consistently working and to ignore their impulses when it comes to feeling like I'm not capable or I'm not talented or whatever, like that can be trained or managed out of someone's life, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
Um, and that's what I find myself doing mostly. And as a teacher, I think that's something you should consider. It's like maybe this person has just a lot of really bad habits, and so instead of treating them as like this person that, like if you look at them as like someone that's sick, right? Then you
Mm-hmm.
can see the context in the way I see it. Right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
look at you guys like you guys are sick people, but you get what I'm saying. Like you guys have bad habits and problems that can be ironed out or fixed. You know,
Right.
that's that's something that you want to focus on. In some situations, people just aren't going to do it, right? And you just got to be cool with that as well as a teacher. Like if you've done everything in your power to open the door to these people and give them every opportunity and advantage, you know, then then you know you can lead a horse to water, but if they don't want to drink, then that's not. That's now
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, there's that you can say I've done all that I could as a teacher. Now it really is up to them. I can't do any more. You know?
Right.
You know, Francois is a good example. Francois, he's taking my class last month and then this month, and so he's continuing on the assignments that he did last month. And me and him had a long talk the other day, and I explained to him, very thoroughly that all he needs to do is just submit work to me, because he wasn't doing that. Because he was always giving me some sort of reason why he couldn't submit, because of this, that, and this. And then I explained it to him very thoroughly, because I had him in class several months before too. So I really was able to use evidence, and I explained to him because he wanted a certain outcome, and I explained to him, but listen, if you would have done everything that I asked of you, you would have had the outcome that you were looking to have today. But because you're getting in your own way, it's not happening. You know, I was like, you have to understand that. And he did, you know, like he was able to eventually like concede. And now he's like submitting every class, and it's fucking good, right?
It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, and I told him that, and he was just, because I basically explained to him that he's a critical thinker. He has analysis paralysis. Like, it's not that he's not working. I actually trust that he's studying and practicing and all that stuff. He's just overly critical, has too much of a high standard for himself. You know, as the highest standards are good, but not good if they paralyze you. You know?
Yeah.
And so, like, having good standards means you're realistic, but having high standards that prevent you from thinking objectively is not good. And that's what he's starting to get out of. And I told him the best way to get out of it is just to put shit out there. And he's doing it, and I'm very proud of him. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if I would have just like straight up just said, like, you just suck, you'll never be able, like, he probably would have been very angry with this, and maybe his reaction wouldn't have been ideal, you know?
Right.
But he's on the path, you know?
Right.
Hold on just a second. My wife's yelling. I have to get going. I have to go pick up the kids.
Okay.
But hopefully
Can I email you one more question?
Yeah, you can message me on the Skype. I'll look at it and I'll answer it.
Okay.
But
cool.
anyways, peace out, guys. Take care. I got to run, literally. And have a great weekend, y'all. Talk to you guys super soon.
Yep, later.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.